What do you think of when I say Kirby? A lot of you may think of the latest title that came out not too long before this video's release, but today I want to wind back the clock all the way back to 1993 and talk about what may be the most broken Kirby speedrun ever. Now, I was surprised to find out that, fun fact, Kirby is not Mario. Unlike the Mario series, which I have dug into time and time again previously, other series, such as the one we are touching on today, really don't have deep histories going that far back. My naive Super Mario brain expected to find some old Kirby speedrun from 2003 or something, but that's not really the case. Fortunately, if you take a step back from real-time runs performed by humans, and you shift over to tool-assisted runs perfected through emulation, it's a completely different story. Bisquit, the founder of the biggest resource for TASes, TAS Videos, published a run of Kirby's Adventure on March 27, 2004, beating the game's required 7 bosses and Nightmare in 44 minutes. This run was performed on the PAL version of the game, which runs at 50 frames per second, instead of 60 frames per second that American NTSC games run at. This led to the run playing 16% faster than normal due to the emulator used at the time, Fantasia, only playing PAL games at NTSC speeds. This means the run was actually closer to 53 minutes long. Moving past the technical nonsense, this run doesn't feature anything mind-blowing, but it was cool to see a proper run from start to finish. This run heavily favored using the wheel ability to blaze past each level. It wasn't until over 2 years later in October 2006 that anything new for the game would really pop up. On the 8th, Kirby Muncher published a task that beat Bisquit's by roughly a minute and a half. When considering Bisquit's task was on PAL, the true improvement was around 10 minutes. This run abused a glitch Kirby Muncher discovered revolving the UFO ability. After the level is finished, they are able to keep the UFO power-up. They were able to do this by re-entering an already beaten level that has the UFO, and when collecting the power-up, they press start and select at the same time. Once you exit the level, you will have the UFO power-up forever, and you will even keep it if you take another hit. A huge disadvantage of having the UFO is the inability to go down ladders or through platforms that Kirby can normally fall through. But outside of that, you were able to both travel and kill enemies both faster and effectively. If you take a glance at TAS videos, you may notice that this run was actually rejected. There's no proper video for it, with there only being a download to the actual movie. You see, JXQ was in the process of making their own TAS using the UFO ability, and just 10 days later published a time that was 6 minutes faster than Kirby Muncher's. 2 mega time losses in Kirby Muncher's run was very unoptimized movement across the board, and had a handful of lag that could have been avoided if more enemies were killed throughout many levels. This previous run ultimately was more of a showcase of the UFO glitch's potential, rather than a really impressive run. By this point, it was found that you could also get the UFO glitch by pressing select at the right moment when getting hit. You will see that after this happens, the game thinks Kirby has no power-up, which is why you will not lose it if you take another hit. Besides basic movement and lag optimizations, JXQ saved so much time from better overall routing with the UFO. In levels such as 2-1 that weren't UFO friendly, they instead take the wheel ability, which they say ultimately was faster for the level as a whole. While no single human was performing runs using these task discoveries, at least publicly documented, it was pretty obvious at this point that there was enough research already poured into the game to make impressive real-time runs a possible reality. Months and months would go by, with very little activity regarding the game. Scrubbing through forums on Speed Demo's archive, a popular speedrun hub in the 2000s and early 2010s, you can find many mentions of Kirby's Adventure, but nothing in terms of actual runs. Well, at least not until 2009. In 2004, the site started taking submissions for a plethora of games, and it took until March 2009 for Kirby's Adventure to have its own published run. Giel Goertz, I probably butchered that, submitted a real-time run using the UFO glitch on the European version of the game that clocked in at 41 minutes and 40 seconds. And when adjusting the timing that would end up being used on leaderboards, changes it to a 4134. Said timing starts on the file selection menu and ends on the last hit of Nightmare. While there is no previous glitchless runs to compare against, watching any section of the run will make you realize this was a solid performance. Every level you skip through, the UFO is used to blaze through each world. It wouldn't be till over 3 years later that anyone else would publicly publish times for the world to see using the UFO glitch. Even getting to the late 2010s, only a select handful of people had done UFO runs. If you think about it though, the glitch required completely new routing and involved constantly abusing one power-up. In the early to mid 2010s, people gravitated towards the any percent no major glitches category that banned the UFO glitch. Moving into 2014 and 2015, a solid leaderboard was already forming around the glitchless category, with many notable runners from the era that you may recognize. Controller Head was one that dominated the category for a significant amount of time during the period, who had a 45.59, 4 minutes slower than the UFO glitch. In regards to the UFO glitch discovery, the terrific Tracy did eventually beat the 2009 record over a decade later, multiple times in early 2020. But let's rewind the clock 8 years. While everyone was having their fun with no major glitches, something else was brewing in the background. If you tap even just a bit into the tool assist community, someone you may dig into when searching around a bunch is Mug, who started tool assisting as early as 2007. Mug has helped tool assist a wide range of games from Mario to obscure Game Boy games. Between all that, he has tackled multiple Kirby runs. Not too far into Mug's tool assisting journey, a YouTube user named The Rock posted a video titled Kirby's Adventure Glitch. This 2-minute video demonstrated the player in 6-1 having the stone ability. They then entered a room with water, and when entering the water and activating the stone ability, this immediately started to make the game freak out, and just seconds later, teleported to the credits. Mug did some initial testing, and with the emulator he was using, FCEU, he could only make the game crash. He eventually deemed this glitch useless. Mug believed this credits warp happened to be an emulation bug in whichever emulator the YouTube uploader was using. This glitch would go on to be buried for years and years, and didn't have any further mention until late 2011, when Mug randomly explored the glitch once again. He almost was led to the same conclusion until he figured out that by pausing the game at the same frame the game crashed, he could get the game to produce different results, and most of the time it warped to the credits sequence. With a forum thread being posted, within days, 2 people, Insult and Cool Kirby, were able to verify this glitch on real hardware. This led to more hope of the stone glitch's potential, and Mug was already on the lookout for a faster route. He figured out that this glitch could be possible in as early as 2-3, a lot earlier than doing it in 6-1. To make this glitch work, you had to be moving into a body of water from either below or from the side, and this was found to be possible in this very specific area. There happens to be open areas at the very bottom of the screen that allow you to move in and out of the water. Touching on something briefly mentioned before, while pausing on the same frame as the game crashing was almost a full guarantee credits would load, it wasn't 100%. Mug noticed that the glitch didn't work as well when playing a sequence of levels beforehand. When the game was reset though, the glitch became more reliable. After this, Mug's new goal was to figure out the fastest route while resetting the game prior to entering 2-3, where the stone glitch had to be executed. After testing multiple theories, the best route ended up being entering 1-1 after finishing 2-2, and then getting the stone ability there. While not resetting at all would be ideal, in Mug's testing without resets, he couldn't really get the credits warp to work properly. So Mug did that exact route re-entering 1-1, and ended up with a task that clocked in at 5 minutes and 44 seconds using tool assist timing, and this beat JXQ's old UFO glitch task by roughly 31 minutes. UFO glitch may have cut off a handful of minutes, but the stone glitch cut off a solid half an hour of gameplay. With a couple people already verifying this was possible on real hardware, it may have not been the easiest trick, but it was inevitable at some point that someone would try this in a proper speedrun attempt from start to finish. Fast forward 1 year from Mug's 5-minute stone glitch task, and Mug was back once again. After a wall clip discovery from a Twitch stream, Mug was able to put together a task that warped to the credits in 1-2, beating the previous task in 2-3 by 4 minutes. To clip under the level, Mug said you need to use a sword or hammer to attack the beam of a Waddle Doo, or the sword slash of a sword knight at the same time you get hit. This surprisingly would never be published to task videos, and some of that reason may be due to it being step 1 in what I would like to call the Kirby Frame War of 2013. The next person in line would be Cool Kirby in June. He started working on a run after Task Editor posted a thread about a glitch allowing you to clip through sloped hills. This made it possible to clip in the third room of 1-1, which happens to have a water section. Remember, for Stone Glitch you need to be able to enter the water from either below or the side. This clip was perfect and allowed over an additional minute to be cut off Mug's run from earlier in the year. It was now possible to beat the game in the very first level, but to Tool Assisters this wasn't enough. Just like a lot of people on dating apps, they ultimately were looking for perfection. With the run consisting of only one level now, there was still little bits of time to be saved, and just 2 weeks after Cool Kirby's task, we got to the final installment of the war, which is where things still sit today. Kirby's Adventure glitched in 35.91 seconds. This task was submitted as a team, which included Mess Hugga, Cool Kirby, Master June, Mug, Task Editor, and was 0x. Each person previously mentioned contributed their own improvements to the run, with Mess Hugga finding some of the last improvements to be made. Task Videos has a really nice write-up between all the authors that I will link down below if you really want to see what went into this concise run. You may have noticed by now that I've been blabbing a lot about the tool assist side of things, but was a human really ever going to do this? Like briefly mentioned before, by 2014, the likes of runners such as Controller Head were dominating the any % no major glitchless category, but nothing too groundbreaking was being done yet. Controller Head was about to change that. On March 25, 2015, he created a Twitch highlight labeled Kirby's Adventure any % glitched in 47 something, with the description stating that any % was dead. While he may have been using splits for one of the traditional game categories, what Controller Head was actually doing was trying to be the first person to mimic what the task had already been doing for quite a while now. In room 3 of the very first level, he got the enemies in the right position to acquire the stone ability, and tried 3 times to clip into the slope next to the water. On his 3rd attempt, he successfully got the desired clip, and with the right inputs right before the game should crash, he became the very first person to not just beat Kirby in an unintended way, but also did it in under a minute. We can see that by the beginning of the following year, it became a proper category on the leaderboards. Controller Head would get quite lonely, as he sat alone on the board for not just 2015, but all of 2016. Sure, this trick may have been hard, but someone else has got to do it eventually, right? With over 2 years passing, the category was really quiet, but before 2017 ended, we finally got one new name. Old School Richard, who runs a wide variety of NES titles, spent 2 to 3 weeks learning and running the category. Reaching out to him, he says he wasn't doing anything new, he primarily was trying to get better RNG with the enemies, as well as getting a faster clip. Remember, Controller Head took 3 tries to clip. On December 28th, he got a low 45-second time, and in the new year on January 2nd, pushed that further to a 44.5. With nothing else to do with the run outside of praying for better RNG and good clips, the record was going to take a bit more than just praying something happened. By the beginning of 2018, 2 others had gotten times that sandwiched themselves between Richard and Controller Head. With the newer any % category having very little activity due to the sheer ridiculousness of it, this leaderboard would look pretty much the same exactly a year later. By 2020 there were a handful of more runs, but nothing that could best the already high standards at the top. 3 years after Richard's second record in the category, we finally would see somebody who had the true potential to push things even further. On January 15th, Rainvoss submitted a 48.9, 4.5 seconds behind Richard. This run took 4 tries to get the ending clip, and if he achieved this first try, it definitely had the potential to match or even beat Richard. With many more sessions under his belt, Rainvoss got a physical cartridge of the game and started up attempts. On his very first try, he amazingly got a time just 100 milliseconds off the record. This run had a faster stone grab, which really helped him get one step closer. This was yet to be the end, because just a week or so later, he would improve one more time and out of nowhere got a 41.6, almost 3 seconds faster than Richard. Comparing Richard and Rain's runs, a lot of time save came from optimizing movement and having the enemies in the right position. Interestingly, Rainvoss caught the suspicion of people in the community, and the time was initially questioned. After providing more than enough proof, everyone came to the conclusion that Rainvoss was simply a really great player, and was also amazing at mashing, which was perfect for the end of the run. They also sport a top time in Mega Man 2, so needless to say, this guy was pretty legit. And if you're curious if another dry spell was going to happen, then don't worry, because more developments would happen sooner than later this time. Another player in 2021 rose to prominence, and his name was Dark Ryolu27. He started running the any percent no major glitches category, and during that time was also coming up with better ways to manipulate the Waddle Dews at the beginning of the run in order to get the tornado ability faster. The fastest way to manipulate, or manip this around the time, was to wait on the title screen for a few seconds before every run, but he wanted to change that. He would discover a couple different ways to manip these enemies, and the final one he settled on would end up being adopted by a few runners in the category. This then led to him wanting to manip the enemies in the rest of the level, and to let you know why this is important, when a hothead spews fire, or a Sparky shoots sparks, it can cause significant lag. Also, Sparkies can jump randomly, so the goal was to reduce lag, and have enemies be as out of the way as possible. By this point, you may have been able to tell that these manips would go perfectly hand in hand with the short any percent run, since the entire run takes place in the very first level. The other thing Dark Ryolu wanted to mess with was subpixels in order to make the ending clip more consistent. He insisted that there was something you could do to make these certain subpixels more consistent. He found a hex value for Kirby's X subpixel position, and the rest would start to become pretty apparent. He realized that Kirby's subpixel is always set to the same value after exiting a door, as well as being able to advance your position 2 different amounts when sliding, depending on whether you're holding right or not. He then eventually shared a video that showed off a more consistent way to clip into the ending slope, as long as you press A on the correct frame. It involves doing a right slide 5 times. You hold only down on the D-pad during the first 3 slides, and then start holding right during the 4th slide. After that, you need to release right once the 5th slide is done, but before doing that you need to release your down input. Ryolu eventually switched the down and right releases to the 1st and 2nd slides, which enabled him to immediately start walking after the slides. There are a lot of other tiny factors in this run that involve RNG, but for simplicity's sake, it's most important that you know how random the enemies are, and the goal of these manips is to get said enemies out of your way as fast as possible. Combining all these discoveries together, he had a run where he was able to immediately get the stone ability in the first room. With a first try clip, he was able to demolish the previous record with a 40.3, an over 1 second improvement. An interesting tidbit is he was running on Kirby's Dream Collection, which was released to celebrate Kirby's 20th anniversary. It included multiple classic Kirby games, as well as a few extra bonuses. Due to this version of the game behaving a little differently than the original, Ryolu claimed it cost him a sub 40-second time, due to the ending credits warp being slower. And one more funny tidbit is that he used the Wii's GameCube port to connect a dance pad, which he used to mash jump, since he found mashing with it easier. Just 2 weeks later though, he would best himself again by using both the newly discovered RNG manip and subpixel setups. He reached his goal that was within arm's reach, and got a 39.98. Talking to Ryolu, the RNG manip he used saves around 2 seconds, and while the subpixel setup may be slower than just praying and running at the slope, it is way more consistent for attempts. Using both the manip and clip, he said he was probably crashing the game only 1 out of 15 runs, and the actual clip he could achieve at least 20% of the time. In regards to how well these setups actually work, he knows of one other person who has successfully used the same setup. And a reminder, this category is not too popular for obvious reasons, so it's to be expected that a lot of these strategies haven't been explored too much. Either way, Ryolu's 39.98 is where the record still stands to this current day as of making this, and who really knows how short this already brief run could be pushed to. Being just the second installment of what would be one of Nintendo's most successful franchises, as well as being released very late into the NES's life, people may sometimes forget about this title, but boy does it pack a punch if you dig further. From one ability allowing you to breeze through the game, to simple slopes allowing you to beat the entire game, this title has been torn apart time and time again. Kirby's adventure may be overshadowed by many of its successors, but deep down it hides some really impressive challenges. Thank you so much for watching.